At 99 years old, Mel Brooks, the legendary comic mind behind iconic films like Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein, is no longer holding anything back, and his latest revelations hit Hollywood with the force of a thunderclap, shedding light on the 5 actors he absolutely could not stand working with, spilling nearly a century's worth of memories, grudges, and unfiltered opinions into the spotlight. First on that list is Jerry Lewis, a man Brooks described behind closed doors with a mixture of awe and exhaustion. Brilliant, draining, impossible. Lewis was, by any measure, a mad genius, perfecting slapstick mayhem for decades, shaping absurdity into a virtuoso form, whose influence echoed throughout the world of comedy. Yet Brooks's admiration for Lewis's craft never translated into affection for the man himself. The tipping point came in the mid-1980s during early work on Finks, a sharp social satire about a billionaire forced into homelessness, when the studio floated Lewis's name for a major supporting role, claiming his involvement would elevate the project. Brooks, who thrived on controlled chaos but never surrendered authority, shut it down instantly, stating plainly to his producer, "I don't need someone who thinks he's funnier than the film." Brooks knew Lewis's reputation far too well, rewriting scenes mid-take, arguing with directors over every syllable, and overwhelming every room with sheer personality. Their one and only meeting, a neutral zone dinner arranged by a mutual acquaintance, ended as Brooks anticipated. Lewis arrived late, launched into a non-stop monologue about the future of American comedy, barely acknowledging Brooks, who listened sparingly, excused himself early, and concluded quietly that they could never work together. On the surface, civility remained. Brooks never mocked Lewis publicly, and Lewis rarely mentioned Brooks at all, but Hollywood insiders understood the truth. There was no affection, no missed opportunity, only the stark reality of two incompatible creative universes. As Brooks once remarked, "If someone sees themselves as the center of the universe, they can't live in mine. I already have a son." Brooks built comedy like an architect, prioritizing ensemble, structure before chaos, and rhythm above ego. His films allowed stars to shine, but only if they recognized the production as a universe, not a spotlight. Lewis couldn't do that. His overflowing talent could not coexist with the collaborative ecosystem Brooks cultivated. Even genius has limits, and in Brooks's universe, trust, timing, humility, and the willingness to serve the story always mattered more than raw ability. Some actors were passed over for lack of skill, while others, like Jerry Lewis, were simply too brilliant to integrate, lacking the one essential trait Brooks demanded, the capacity to play wholeheartedly and selflessly within the comedy. Then there was Gene Wilder, whose professional rupture with Brooks cut deeper than any other. Wilder was not just another performer in Brooks's universe. He was a co-conspirator, a partner in reinventing comedy itself. Together, they didn't just make films, they detonated expectations. Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein were not merely successes. They were seismic events, stitched together by Wilder's tremulous sincerity and razor-sharp timing, which transformed Brooks's wild chaos into magical, unforgettable cinematic moments. Wilder brought an electrical tenderness to Brooks's madness, shaping scripts, stabilizing tone, and bringing heart to the comedy. Yet after Young Frankenstein, the ground began to shift. Wilder wrote the adventure of Sherlock Holmes's smarter brother, dreaming of directing it with Brooks's guidance, expecting mentorship and partnership, only for Brooks to decline, citing experience rather than malice. Wilder perceived the rejection differently, as a door quietly closing, and when he proceeded to make the film, the old alchemy was gone. The warmth they once shared cooled. What had been effortless now felt forced, as if the constellation of their collaboration had scattered. Over the years, they drifted apart silently, without public recrimination or tabloid drama, leaving Brooks with a lingering ache akin to watching a brother pack his bags while taking your best punchline along. Even when chance brought them together later, the reunion was tentative, a handshake, a few gentle jokes, but the trust that had defined their golden era remained fractured. Wilder's absence ended the sacred loop of collaboration where Brooks relied on instinctive completion of thoughts and scene elevation, and Brooks, ever protective of his creative circle, never reopened that door. Chevy Chase was another name that frequently surfaced in conversations around Brooks's projects during the 1980s and early 1990s. Studios loved him. He had marquee power, a sly mastery of dry humor from Saturday Night Live and Fletch, yet Brooks dismissed him every single time. Chase violated Brooks's most sacred unwritten rule. He was not a team player. From backstage chatter and interviews, the pattern was clear. Chase was sharp, blisteringly quick, and wickedly funny, but he could also freeze a room with a single remark or an arched eyebrow. Brooks observed, "He's not performing. He's waiting for everyone else to stop talking so he can remind them he's the smartest guy there." For Brooks, comedy thrived on generosity. Actors who could deliver a punchline and gracefully hand the rhythm to others, blending into the ensemble rather than seizing it. Chase did not blend, he eclipsed. When studio executives suggested Chase for Spaceballs as Dark Helmet, Brooks barely considered it, ultimately choosing Rick Moranis, whom he described as knowing when to step forward and, crucially, when to step back. In Brooks's philosophy, comedic chemistry outweighed celebrity value. Timing mattered, trust mattered, and ego did not. Chase's ego often took the lead. Their only encounter was short and stiff. Chase arrived with star swagger. Brooks searched for that intangible click, the musicality of collaboration, but it never appeared. Brooks offered a faint diplomatic smile and a simple, maybe in another universe. Chase never crossed into Brooks's world. Brooks only occasionally mused about actors too aware of themselves to be present, carefully skipping names, leaving the rest unsaid. Harvey Korman was another brilliant actor whose talent came with friction. Known for The Carol Burnett Show and an improvisational energy that could bend any room to his will, Korman thrived in a creative ecosystem built on spontaneity and adaptability. Stepping onto a Brooks set, however, meant entering a universe governed by precise rhythm, structure, and timing, where every beat, inflection, and micropause was meticulously composed. A single improvisation could disrupt the flow, and Korman, as gifted as he was, struggled to resist creative wanderings. On High Anxiety, where he played Dr. Montague, the tension between his instinctive improvisation and Brooks's controlled orchestration became palpable. Korman wanted to reinvent his character, adding tangents and new quirks, while Brooks insisted, "We already wrote the funny part. We just need you to do it." Tension lingered silently. Every glance, note, and reading carried the weight of two strong wills refusing to bend. Brooks delivered instructions through intermediaries as Korman isolated himself. Yet on screen, Korman's brilliance remained, Dr. Montague emerging pitch-perfect, sharp, and flawlessly comedic. Audiences never glimpsed the strain behind the camera, but Brooks remembered, and the experience removed Korman from his casting lists. Not from resentment, but drained resolve. Some actors bring joy. Korman brought brilliance that came with friction, a reminder that even comedy is a delicate balance of power, timing, and mutual respect. Finally, Frank Langella arrived on the set of Dracula, dead and loving it, carrying the weight of stage royalty, Broadway credibility, and a regal, magnetic presence perfect for Dracula. Yet Brooks's vision demanded chaos and velocity, a Dracula who could seduce a room one moment and tumble into absurdity the next. Langella's gravitas, his Shakespearean thunder, collided with Brooks's comedic universe. Rehearsals dragged as Brooks tiptoed around Langella's unyielding solemnity. Langella performed each line as if delivering a cathedral sermon, while Brooks wanted controlled chaos. The final realization came during a test read when Brooks handed Langella a setup designed to collapse into slapstick gold. Langella paused, asking sincerely, "Do you want me to mock the text?" Brooks replied, "No, I want you to survive it." It was undeniable. They were operating in different universes. The split happened quietly, with no blow-up, no animosity, just a dignified exit, leaving space for Leslie Nielsen to step in, a master of straight-faced lunacy who could anchor the chaos, slip on a rug, and make it look inevitable, becoming the comedic linchpin Brooks needed. Throughout these experiences, the narrative demonstrates that Mel Brooks's genius was not merely in his ability to craft laughs, but in his uncompromising commitment to ensemble harmony, rhythm, and trust. Talent alone was insufficient. Collaboration required humility, timing, and a willingness to serve the story. From Jerry Lewis's overwhelming personality to Gene Wilder's drift, Chevy Chase's ego, Harvey Korman's friction, and Frank Langella's gravitas, Brooks navigated the complexities of human temperament with precision, protecting his creative ecosystem while allowing comedy to flourish. Each anecdote, each decision, reflects a philosophy that comedy is less about individual brilliance and more about how talent synchronizes within a carefully orchestrated universe. And Brooks, even at 99, remains an unapologetic guardian of that universe, revealing both the humor and the heartbreak behind the curtain of legendary Hollywood comedies, leaving audiences to marvel not just at the laughs, but at the careful architecture of laughter itself, the delicate choreography that transforms chaos into timeless art, the invisible rhythm that only a master like Brooks could see, and the lesson that even in the most absurd worlds, respect, trust, and selflessness remain the true measure of creative greatness, a philosophy that shaped some of the most iconic comedies of the 20th century, the kind that endure in memory, influence generations, and remind us that behind every laugh, there is discipline, vision, and the courage to say no when brilliance threatens the balance. And that is the essence of Mel Brooks, a man whose humor is legendary, whose standards are uncompromising, and whose reflections at 99 years old offer a rare, unvarnished glimpse into the alchemy of comedy, the cost of collaboration, and the unforgiving yet enchanting ecosystem that is the world of Mel Brooks.